Hey everyone, I think we're in trouble because it seems that somehow we have caused a massive meltdown over at the Bethesda customer service since somewhere on November 29th, their artificial unintelligence chat tool has stopped posting review responses. Now the likely reason being that its responses were causing a massive fallout across the community. Now to sum it up, they provide no valuable content in reply and only conjure up more negativity, but they do reflect the corporate strategy apparently chosen for Starfield's future. Now I spent the better part of the past week and weekend contemplating whether or not I should make a video about this, but between the customer service AI debacle and thinking about why we're seeing such a gap between the game's hype and its reception, the more I thought it would be interesting to have a discussion about the reasons why some of our hopes and dreams for the title such as Starfield do not simply align with the strategy Bethesda has chosen for its title 25 years in the making. Before we get started, a big thank you to everyone having watched my content lately, but in particular to all my subscribers. Thank you for your support and a great interaction over these past few weeks. So don't hesitate to share your opinion in a comment, and in case if you aren't subscribed yet, if you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell. Let's go. As someone who can enjoy Starfield for what it is at the moment, I recognize that you and I might have very different opinions on what Starfield means for you as a game. Now, we have had our expectations prior to launch, we have today's reality, and we can dream about the future, I guess. But the truth is that a lot of those dreams will never become a reality because of certain decisions made years ago by Bethesda. So what can we expect for Starfield? Let's take a look at what separates fact from fiction. So if you're unaware of what the AI ruckus is all about, let me quickly set the scene for you. Players leaving negative Starfield reviews on Steam from launch all the way up to the end of November have received responses from Bethesda customer support, but only, it turns out, specifically in the form of AI-generated counter-arguments as to why you should have fun doing any of the other activities in the game. Now, to make this more concrete, here's an example. So as you can see, this person is clearly disappointed and a lot of points are made on different aspects of the game. But clearly loading screens is a pretty prominent topic in the first half here. So let's take a look at the response that Bethesda has sent out. Now, I know from reading this, I had my eyebrows raised when reading the response, and not everyone who leaves a review is looking for an actual answer. But sometimes you just want to express your emotions when then, either when you're excited or you have been waiting for a game to come out for years. So what about the actual contents of the response then? Well, interestingly enough, the gameplay activities suggested in the response open up a larger discussion about the game's fundamental design and how it holds up against gamers' current day expectations. So the phrase "don't think about a pink elephant" really comes to mind here. The customer service. Now, to just give some context here, using AI in customer service is nothing new. Companies we consume products or services from in everyday life already use it. So think of Amazon, Google, Netflix, Tesla, and Domino's Pizza. Bethesda probably opted for AI here for the same reason as those companies did, or the majority, because it can reduce your team's workload, and if implemented properly, it can lead to a more effective approach in customer services. So take note of "if implemented properly." And a good example of this is Krafton. So the developer known for PUBG Battleground, Krafton is one of the largest gaming companies in the world, based in South Korea. And when they were faced with the challenge of needing a more consistent handling of their multilingual tickets, they turned to AI. Now in the end, they were able to process tickets 18% faster, reduce the number of inquiries by 28%, sorry English, and reduce personnel cost by 15%. Now Bethesda had probably hoped for something similar in mind, but as with any AI tool, it still needs human input and then a strategy for its output. So that's where this is going sideways. Now in most cases, these responses give off a vibe of "you're wrong," you as the reviewer. So in more than one reply, a particular quote from a New York Times interview around release by Ashley Chang, Bethesda's managing director, and Todd Howard is used to address people's concerns about the size of the game, the size of the galaxy, and that it would become boring when exploring. So the reply that they used was, when the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. Now, and think of it, that reply came from a human, so it wasn't the best reply within the context of that discussion to begin with. But to allow for your AI tool to keep using that as a response to people whenever they use the word boring in a review is even worse. So obviously, playing a video game in today's market in 2023 isn't the same thing as going to the actual moon in 1969. But this entire debate about the size of the game world, it made me think about Bethesda's design purpose. So what do you want players to experience in the game? Now, I can probably make an entire video on expectation management alone here, but I'm going to focus instead on the questions: should we have expected Bethesda to produce a space RPG tailored to our expectations as an audience in 2023? Or is Bethesda expecting us to know what type of RPG to expect from them, and to adjust our expectations accordingly? The player journey. Now, Bethesda designed Starfield for longevity, with the goal to have people play the game for years to come in the future. So, how do you keep a game fun for such a long period of time? Now, I believe that at one point they felt they had the solution to this, between being able to do reruns with different characters, having the new Game Plus option, and the size of the game. So specifically to have 1,000 planets to visit and to feel small and overwhelmed in this galaxy. Now, altogether, this, according to Bethesda, should have given us enough incentive to keep playing. But this is all very high level, so in order for that to happen, it really comes down to how exciting and engaging those actual gameplay systems underneath are. Now, at some point, judging from stuff like environmental hazards, food, pharmaceuticals, needing fuel for your ship, using outposts as stepping stones to just further venture into the galaxy, it seems that those systems were much more meaningful than they are now. Now, space combat has been described by Todd as being an added element, a space shooter, so not necessarily an RPG element, which is probably why our expectations of space travel were so different from what we actually got in the game. Now, instead of what we were hoping for, we now have a whole bunch of loading screens. You can't fly to and land on planets where you want to, at least not to the extent as what we've already seen from No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, and will be seeing from Star Citizen. But that's because that element in the game does not fit Bethesda's vision of what Starfield primarily should be about. I'm just really curious, how do you feel, watching this video and having played Starfield? What is your take on what should be included, or what should be a certain standard when it comes to the space traveling element of a game now in 2023? So just let me know down in the comments. The developers. To clarify, it's easy to be negative, and I do fall victim to that myself from time to time, if I allow myself to become very critical of gameplay or about gameplay mechanics. But 200 years in the future from now, does this or that make sense, or why can I just land where I want to, but instead I have to walk 900 yards to my destination? That being said, I've seen people going after the developers as if somehow that label encompasses the entire company Bethesda, but that's not fair, because I believe it does need to be said that despite how you might feel about where the game is at this moment, and if that lines up with your expectations, whether it's enough between what was marketized and what you were hoping for, there have been so many people over at Bethesda who have been putting their hearts and souls into making Starfield. for many of whom it was their dream to once work at a game studio designing these huge titles. So all the unique sides you do get to experience and to explore, the quests, the storytelling, the visuals, people have put a lot of work into designing and fine-tuning all of that content, and they definitely deserve our praise for that. But let me make one thing perfectly clear. I am an armchair developer. I look at this game's features through the eyes of a player, looking for immersion. So I'm not a modder, and as a result I'm not hindered by any knowledge or experience whatsoever when it comes to developing a game, so I can't give an accurate testimony about the technical framework that defines the tools for the team to make these ideas come to life. Now, if you are a modder or a developer, please correct me in a comment if I'm wrong, if I'm making any false statements, but I've done my best to research the relevant information. Everyone should decide how they want to judge Bethesda's latest product. I'm just saying, do not tar everything with the same brush. Try to separate the game's cons that are the result of executive boardroom level decisions 7-8 years ago from the work that developers delivered within the possibilities of the tools they had to work with. Now, you might recognize this from your own job. You don't necessarily control the narrative of how your work is being sold or marketed towards the public, but you are doing the best that you can to make it something to feel proud of. The pink AI elephant in the room. Why would customer service keep referring back to already existing features, basically suggesting that you look at what you have now instead of sharing a roadmap of upcoming improvements, or share plans to enrich systems such as exploration, survival, or to make outposts more dynamic? By telling you not to worry about stuff that you are worried about, because here are 15 other things that you could be doing instead, then it will only become more prominent in your mind. Now, you would think that the goal for these replies is to provide any perspective on future developments for Starfield, but this doesn't seem to be part of the Bethesda plan. Now, they have delivered the core basic version of the game, developed in accordance to their list of gameplay elements, and now the long-term strategy will be kicking in. The Bethesda Formula. The Elder Scrolls and Fallout series are huge RPG franchises. Players will overall agree that there is a specific Bethesda magic or feeling to these games. So, as Todd has put it, Starfield is a Bethesda RPG through and through, where you step into a new world and get this feeling of unlimited possibilities. Now, this means that you can look back in gaming history and extrapolate Bethesda's behavior when it comes to creating and developing games and copy and paste that onto Starfield. So perhaps in more graceful words, they wanted to stay true to what makes Bethesda, Bethesda. Which also means that they approached Starfield as a project of how they wanted this game to turn out. And not only at launch, but also how can they develop it over time to make it even more their own in-house style RPG. The only issue with this line of thinking is that the studio is designing towards what it believes an RPG of this type should look like, so more reliant on the quests, characters, and this concept of being an explorer, not necessarily what the players expect from a modern day new era RPG game. Now, you can see this in the AI responses. Here are the elements that we have in this game that are fun to do. Don't try and tell us how to improve this game. Sure, there will be limitations, I guess, when you are developing a game. You have to draw a line somewhere, but it feels like Bethesda is very much sticking to, we know what works, look at our past results, instead of adapting its formula to the ever-evolving needs and demands, I guess, of the market. So in that case, I know a good phrase as well: past performance is no guarantee of future results. And on top of that, by marketing the game in a certain way with certain phrases or words, an image of this game has been created and planted as a seed in our brains. And players will then take that image and add to that what they already know from what's possible from other games, so both in terms of technology and gameplay. The competition. What about these other games then? So Cyberpunk 2077, No Man's Sky and Star Citizen, which a lot of people seem to use as a cater of reference when looking at Starfield and pointing out stuff that those games do better or differently. Then it's only fair that we do recognize that both Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky had very rocky releases, and that's putting it mildly, because Cyberpunk was full of bugs to the extent that Sony actually pulled the game from their online store. And No Man's Sky, it faced pretty similar criticism to what Starfield is getting now when talking about procedurally generated planets being boring, gameplay being labeled as repetitive, and inventory management being tedious. However, both games have redeemed themselves by the relentless work of their respective studios to keep making improvements through bug fixes and content updates. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Bethesda is taking the same route, expecting to be able to follow a similar redemption arc. But certain aspects of Starfield cannot simply be patched or modded, and that has to do with another wildly debated topic, the game engine. Now, as stated before, I am not a developer of any kind, so I had to get myself up to speed on game engines, and in particular what the creation engine allows for Bethesda's developers to make possible in a typical Bethesda RPG. So, leading up to and after Starfield's release, the Creation Engine 2 has been debated on a lot, with people fearing it would not be up to the job in creating this next-gen new era space RPG. Now, as with any large projects, such as, building a new game, a company has to make trade-offs. The outcome is never ideal because you are giving the green light for one thing while putting something else in the fridge. Now, in the end, I believe there are three distinct reasons as to why Bethesda chose to stick to Creation Engine and upgrade it to version 2. Now, creating an entirely new engine is a huge, time-consuming, costly project, and it will put a huge strain on your human resources, on your developers, taking away from development days instead of working on games. 2, your developers are already familiar with this engine, its documentation, and its technical and functional possibilities. So, to quote someone that we know, it just works. Reason number 3 being modders. The modding community. Now, improving this game's explorer experience and achieve the longevity that Todd said they have designed Starfield for will not only come from Bethesda, what is somewhat of a BGS title tradition, I guess. For a large part, it will come from the modding community. Now, we've seen this with Skyrim and other BGS titles where people went to work on modifications almost immediately after release. So if the goal was to design Starfield for longevity, taking Skyrim as an example, then Bethesda would want to enable modders to get to work on Starfield as fast as possible. So it makes sense that they've chosen for a new iteration of the Creation Engine, apparently because of its ease of use, and if you're counting on a lot of fans moving from Skyrim to Starfield, then a lot of modding experience is also going to carry over. Now, if you're a modder watching this, please let me know what your take on this is and if you share the same opinion or not. So it seems as though Bethesda's expectations in this are that the community will cover bug fixes and also make adjustments to the game based on player feedback, and maybe even faster than the studio itself could with a bug fix update or some DLC. So it saves time, money, and hopefully, for Bethesda's reasoning, it results in happier players. The summary. Now, as far as customer service goes, is this a smart way to treat people playing your game and then running reviews? Definitely not. So, in the end, it does seem like Bethesda was expecting us to know what type of RPG to expect from them, and in addition, what not to expect from them. Now, I can only hope Starfield as a project and the audience's response to it will prove a learning lesson for Bethesda's next project, The Elder Scrolls 6. Leave a comment with your thoughts and I will respond as soon as possible. Subs and likes are greatly appreciated. A big shout out to all subscribers for your support and your feedback. I am looking forward to your responses, so I will reply with a personally written response of my own. See you next time. Bye guys.